Hey Clashers, we just had a World Championship qualifier where, well, we had a little bit of drama in this one because we had a lot of the top players being enraged or complaining about the Super Archer Blimp and the Super Barbarians. So I thought I would just share my point of view about this. And the first thing I want to do before we're jumping into my opinion is I want to share a bit of background information with you because I feel like that's really important. Because at the end of this video, or more like at the end of the background informations, I want to have you guys out there to form your own opinion and don't just copy any other's opinion because I feel like that is just wrong. And to get your own opinion about some stats and strategies and whatever, the best site to visit is the Chase with Ace profile. Because he's collecting all of those stats, starting with just the recent qualifier. Now we can go back in time as well, rewatching a couple of the other tournaments of the year, where I feel like this is really important because picking only one tournament is maybe not representing the whole story. So let's just start in the beginning of the year with the Town Hall 15 warm-up tournament, which is kind of leading into the World Championship. And we have the strategy Super Archer Lado with 8 use cases and overall hit rate of 37.5%, which represents like 37 out of 100 attacks would be a 3-star with this success rate. But overall, it's the average success rate of this tournament. It's not the craziest use rate, so nothing really crazy in here. Let's just move on to the next tournament, where we have then the Rush qualifier, or like the Rush golden ticket event, where in the Swiss stage, the Super Archer Blimp were used quite a bit with like 3.3% use rate in the tournament, but only an 18% success rate. So this has to be one of the worst success rates we had a strategy is having in those tournaments with, well, not too low use rate overall. But hey, let's just move on because this was the Swiss stage, right? So let's just take a look at the playoffs now, where the top 8 teams are in there. So let's scroll up a little bit. There we go. This should be now the playoffs. Now in the playoffs, it was already a little bit higher. The use rate now of 6.4% and a success rate of 33%, which is still about way below average, and a 1-star rate of 11%. Which isn't that great either. But hey, let's move on. Maybe that's just bad time for the Super Archer Blimp. By the way, this is before the nerf, okay? Just saying. So now let's just move on to the next big tournament, which was the first big tournament after the nerf. So this is now the time where we had the summer update just happened. And, well, the blimps are not getting used really that much anymore. We don't see really blizzards anymore. We don't really see Super Archer blimps anymore. But that has changed because the next big event is the most recent event, which is the Clash Masters, which is the qualifier everyone is talking about. And on this one, we have the Super Archer blimp finally up there, being one of the top 2 most used strategies in this tournament. This is now Swiss stage and the playoffs combined, which is representing kind of nicely the overall success rate of different strategies. And well, in the top 3, Super Archer Blimp Super Barbarians does not have the highest hit rate. It has the second highest. If you take a look at the top 10 most used strategies and compare the hit rate, Super Archer Blimp with the Super Barbarians has actually the 6th highest hit rate, which is still one, like, why is then the strategy OP, right, if you just look at the numbers? So that's again a big question mark. But let's move on. Let's only take a look at the top, the peak performance, okay? Let's take a look at the top, and this is now the comparison between the overall hit rate with the Swiss stage and then to the playoffs. And this is then where you can kind of see the difference in hit rate with the Super Archer Blimp, Super Barbarians. But as well, this is now the point where you might realize, wait a second, the Queen Shore Super Barbarians is having a similar hit rate as the Super Archer Super Barbarians. And a Super Archer attack, pretty much earlier this year on other events, had really low success rates. So is the Super Archer Blimp the problem, or is the Super Barbarian the problem? That now might get you thinking, okay, I understand that. But let's just move on with more background information. Because remember, this is now the top 8 teams in the world. This is like the peak performance we can talk about in Clash of Clans. But I feel like when talking about overall balance, those 8 teams do not really represent anything, I guess, to be honest. No offense, obviously, but we should take a look as well at the competitive community, which is possible because the competitive Clash network is actually tracking over 500 clans playing tournaments and tracking their stats. So I thought, okay, let's take a look at the stats of the top teams like Na'Vi or Tribe, because those are the teams you guys always watch. I mean, this is kind of those are the teams which are most watched on YouTube, and I feel like a lot of people think they are representing the competitive scene, which might not be the case, as you have already noticed. But let's just take a look at the hit rate. So from since the update, the summer update, the Tunnel 15.5 update, until now, Na'Vi is having a success rate of slightly above 62%. That is insane. That is crazy. That is a crazy stat right there. So Na'Vi being insanely strong. And then we have, for example, another top team, let's pick Tribe for example, which have an around same hit rate with I think just slightly below 60% success rate since the update until now. With that being said, now those two top teams having around 60%, and those being the teams which are mainly streamed, mainly on YouTube and everything, and a lot of people thinking, hey, those top teams, they're having crazy hit rates. This game is just so easy. It's way too easy to get 3 stars, right? Like every team at the competitive scene is just 3-starring left and right, and it's easy. Well, now at this point I want to ask you guys, what do you think the average success rate of those 500 tracked teams which are all playing tournaments? This is the competitive community then, okay? This is the competitive community a lot of people like to talk about. What success rate do you think they have on average? We're not talking about the weakest team, we're not about the strongest team like just with the Na'Vi, we're talking about the average. What do you think is that? Well, I will just tell you, it's half the hit rate, 34%. This is half the success rate of the top teams have. And this is kind of how a lot of people get maybe a little bit brainwashed, because what you see and what the reality is completely different. So if you watch those match videos, if you watch live streams of pros playing, I don't think any of the streamers would pick an average team. I think they would always watch a Na'Vi match. I mean, when a Na'Vi match is happening, there's like 20 million streamers live on Twitch or wherever streaming that match. If there is an average team which is maybe never making it to playoffs or always losing the first round of playoffs of a tournament, I'm not really sure if anyone would stream that match, except if their opponent is Na'Vi, obviously. But with this being said, this is kind of showcasing you how the overall feeling of an entire community is completely getting directed into the wrong direction, in my opinion. And, well, you can already notice by now, we're slowly getting into the part where I'm sharing my own opinion. Because I feel like only having stats based on the top peak of the player base is not really helping the game. Because in the first place, I can totally understand the complaints of the pros, because I was in the same position. I did complain back then when I was playing pretty much about the same things. I can totally understand why they're doing it. At the same time now, at this point, it's like my point of view has kind of changed. While I can understand why they're just hoping for a good balance for the way how they play the game, at this point now, you always have to be thinking about the overall game balance, right? Like if the top teams have a 62% hit rate, that's maybe a bit too high. But if the average tournament playing community is having an average hit rate of 34%, this is not that high anymore. And then what do you think does the rest of the community has? Like, remember, the competitive community is maybe representing 1% of the player base. Maybe, I think it's less, but let's say 1%. What about the 99%? What about the other players out there? So this is kind of leaving me really with an easy statement. I just think the game is still way too hard right now for the game. Not for the competitive community, for competitive community maybe even as well. For the top teams, no. For the top teams right now, it's maybe a little bit too easy. But then again, that's the question. What do you want to have a game balance? Like, what should it cater to? Should it cater to the 0.001% teams out there? Or should it cater to the rest of the game? What is the objective here, right? Like, this is kind of where I'm going, and this is kind of what I'm trying to accomplish with this video. Really giving you the background story and sharing with you that, well, maybe watching only one team is not really giving you a clear indicator of how easy or not easy the game is. So let's just move on. The next thing is a lot of things I see in the comments, or I see in like especially on comments of like posts and stuff, is, well, Super Archer Blimp being OP. And this is the main video, by the way, where I'm still getting to a conclusion, or like the main part of the video. But I get a lot of people saying Super Archer Blimp being too strong. But I feel like the main problem with this is that, well, there is a difference between the game meta, as we have just seen with the stats, and the pro meta. So you have to understand when you're watching pro matches and you're copying their bases, because this is what I feel like a lot of people do, because by now it's just so easy. When you're copying their bases, you do not copy their meta. The meta inside the game is completely different to what the meta inside a pro match is. Well, when you're getting asked, or when I get asked in the comments, it's what is the best strategy for whatever town hall? Let's say town level 12. I think everyone would say, well, Lalo is the strongest strategy, pretty much, like on any town level. Well, this is not the reality for the game overall, because you need to play Lalo really good to make it the strongest strategy. So I feel like for the majority of clashes out there, Mass Witches might be the best town hall 12 strategy, because it is way more realistic that they can pull off those attacks, and they will have a way better success rate with a Mass Witch attack compared to a Lalo attack. And if you're then copying those pro bases and having to face the reality, and this is, a lot of people like to use the Super Archer Blimp, and yes, it is somewhat easy, well, those bases a lot of times get wrecked. And this is not because, well, they're the best base builders and see their bases get wrecked. No, they're living in a complete different world when it comes down to the meta. You can tell by the use rate of all the tournaments I have showcased you over this video that those pros are defending other strategies. Let's go a bit more in depth. What is the biggest counter to a Super Archer Blimp, for example? Well, a lot of times it's like poison tower combined with like really nicely placed giant bombs, for example. What is the spare towers that pros use? Right, at least one rage in every base, if not even 2 rage towers in every single base. What is the best counter against that again? Oh, it's Super Archer Blimp? Oh, okay, that makes sense. So you can see by now why we have this. Now, with the Super Archer Blimp being only one part of the problem mentioned by the pros, we have the Super Barbarians. Same thing here. Super Barbarians are shining right now because in the pro meta, you're kind of splitting out the defenses, spreading them out, having open walls. All of this is pretty much what is inviting a Super Barbarian attack. And this is why we had those success rates in the last tournament. And that's kind of overall already kind of the truth behind it, that this strategy is kind of somewhat countering the pro bases. Is that good? Is that bad? I guess that's a different question. But do I think that those troops deserve a nerf because of that? I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm sorry, but I don't think so. The Super Archer Blimp especially, I feel like, is helping a lot of players enjoying the game with how hard it is right now to 3-star for the majority of clashes out there. Super Barbarians, I don't feel the same way about them. To be honest, I would not really care that much if they would get nerfed into the ground, because they're not a strategy which a lot of casuals would use. A lot of casuals are still using the Super Archer Blimp with like Dragon Rider, stuff like that. So I would not care too much if the Super Barbarians would get nerfed. And I think if you really want to like get into one troop and nerf that, I think it might be the Super Barbarians. But then again, I feel like it is just mainly that strong because those bases are just so open. If you take a look again at the last weekend, or like the last weekends and matches, with how open those bases are overall for the Super Barbarians. But that's pretty much it. I hope I was able to kind of break this down really nicely for you guys, like share all of the background information to get your own opinion, explain why you might have the feeling that, well, your own bases are always getting wrecked, and by own bases I mean the bases you copied from pros, and well, you might just want to switch a couple of things up and want to change some things if you copy those bases to really make sure they're defending that strategy. And as well, I have to say, I think this last event, at least for me, was one of the most fun events we had so far inside Clash of Clans. Finally an event with not a 40 to 50% use rate of Lalo, because this is the next crazy thing about those pro events. 50% use of Lalo is fine for the pros, but as soon as there is a Super Archer Blimp in the top use rate strats, it's crazy, it's broken. That is a logic I guess no one understands except the competitive community itself. But hey, it is what it is, nothing we can do about that. I still hope that you really enjoy the game. I think I would have never thought that I would say this, but I missed Tunnel 14 with like the hit rate and stuff because I think it was fun. Was it helpful? Was it good for the pro community? No, really not. Was it good for the game? I would say yes. But hey, this is where you guys come in now. Let me know your comments. Go crazy, but don't offend anyone. This is really important. Don't go crazy at anyone. Just share your opinion, and that can be done in a nice way as well. Be respectful, and well, let's have some nice discussions. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you guys back tomorrow. Until then, and bye bye.